ancient astronaut theory suggests that at some point, extraterrestrials targeted our DNA with an artificial mutation of our genes.
Minutes ago, a man abducted by aliens revealed the shocking truth about life. He woke up to find 10 whole days wiped from his memory. It all started with what should have been a simple drive from Rotorua to Auckland in 1989. But when he arrived, he was completely lost and felt drained. Both his watch and car clock had eerily stopped at 10:30 a.m. What if he had uncovered a frightening secret too perilous to share? Let us dig into the terrifying unknown lurking just beneath the surface of our everyday lives. The forgotten days of interstellar encounter. This experience completely changed how he saw life on Earth. When he returned, government agencies tried to keep him from sharing what he had learned. In this story, we'll look into his abduction and the important things he says we need to know about aliens and humanity. But just as he was about to disclose the critical details, a mysterious figure silenced the room, warning, "Some truths are too dangerous for mankind to know." It all started in early February of 1989 when he was driving from Rotorua to Auckland in New Zealand, a trip that should have been about 200 kilometers or around a 3-hour drive. However, when he reached Auckland, he felt strangely exhausted. His heart was racing and his mouth was dry. He knew Auckland well, but somehow he got lost in the city. He took a break, had something to eat, and realized that both his watch and car clock had stopped at 10:30 in the morning. Thinking it was nothing, he decided to rest, hoping the next day would be normal. But when he woke up, he found out that 10 days had passed, and he had no memory of them. In the days after this, he struggled with confusion, strange dreams, and constant headaches. His car started having problems too, so he had to sell it for very little money. While cleaning out the car, he found 2 small crystals and a sketchbook filled with drawings he didn't remember making. At first, he didn't think much of it and put the sketches aside at home. A few days later, 2 men came to his door. They said they were scientists from the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research. One of them had a New Zealand accent, and the other had a British accent. They showed him their ID cards, one even from the Royal Institute for International Affairs. He thought it was strange, but answered their questions politely. They seemed really interested in his car and were disappointed when they learned he had already sold it. After asking more questions, they left, only to return weeks later with more urgent questions. Not able to give them any new information, he asked them to leave and not come back. The next day, he had a feeling that someone had entered his apartment. Although nothing seemed out of place, the crystals and some of the pages from his sketchbook were missing. He hoped this meant they would leave him alone, but things were just getting stranger. He began to remember the abduction through vivid dreams, and slowly a clear story started to take shape. He began writing these memories down. Eventually, he wrote a book called Co-Evolution, an interplanetary adventure, where he shared the story of his 10-day abduction and the things he learned about aliens and the history of humanity. They appeared female but had smooth, shiny skin with no hair and large heads with big eyes. They didn't wear any clothes and communicated with him silently, guiding him into a clear room that seemed to form around him. Inside the space, he noticed that his own skin had changed too. He looked hairless and blue-gray, almost like plastic. One of these beings sent him a thought, suggesting they go to a more comfortable place where he could meet others. Up to this point, he hadn't thought of these beings as aliens. In fact, he thought they might be angels, and for a moment, he even wondered if he had died. This was just the beginning of his incredible story about meeting these beings and learning about their world, a journey that would change his view of life and humans forever. He steps into a world where the usual meets the unusual, telepathy among the stars. While studying one of the celestial beings, he noticed something striking about her. Her eyes sparkled with a color that was somewhere between purple and blue, something he'd never seen before. Her neck was long and elegant, leading to smooth, soft shoulders. Her arms were also long, and each hand had 5 delicate fingers. He felt strangely drawn to follow her as she walked to a place that looked like a bowling alley. Left on his own, he wandered down a long hallway until he found a door at the very end. To his amazement, he passed through it like a ghost, as if he wasn't solid. Inside, the next room looked more familiar. It had chairs, desks, and tables, but all of them were rounded with no sharp edges. There was a woman sitting at one of the tables, and she was clearly human. He could feel her presence, and surprisingly, he could hear her thoughts directly in his mind. She greeted him warmly without saying a word. When he tried to respond, no sound came out. She kindly suggested that he just think his answers as they communicated through telepathy. It's important to explain that these celestial beings talked using telepathy, a way of sharing thoughts mind to mind without speaking out loud. This form of communication is faster and clearer than speaking, as it doesn't rely on using muscles, organs, or the vibrations needed for human speech. Their way of talking, filled with colors and musical tones, made sure their messages were always perfectly understood without the confusion humans sometimes face when using words. He was also intrigued by how they used numbers in writing. Their number system was based on 12, unlike the system of 10 that humans use. They had noticed natural patterns that made 12 more fitting. Their writing wasn't just made up of symbols, but had colors too. Each color, whether dark, light, or in between, added more meaning to what was being written. During his time with them, he learned this new way of communication quickly. He drew their letters and numbers as well as he could remember, noting how important the number 12 was. It seemed sacred, woven into their culture and beliefs. Colors also had deep meaning. For instance, white was used to show emptiness or space between ideas in their writing. A woman named Xena, who guided him on the ship, explained that these beings were considering Earth as a new home for themselves. However, they struggled with the planet's gravity. She mentioned that changes were coming soon to make this possible. Tired from all the new information, he agreed to rest, not knowing that she would soon reveal even bigger secrets. In a quiet white room, she told him the real story of humanity. She said that evolution didn't just happen naturally, but was guided by these advanced beings. They had visited Earth many times, shaping it and performing genetic experiments that eventually led to the creation of humans. Earth wasn't just a random planet to them. It was like a safe place where they could observe and guide their experiments. Some of them had even stayed behind, acting as protectors for the humans they helped create. She also explained that these protectors had influenced human progress, helping build things like the pyramids as lasting symbols of their work. Humanity was their special project, carefully watched over for thousands of years, with the goal that humans would one day understand greater truths about the universe. However, a darker force had also taken root on Earth. This presence had woven itself into human DNA, causing dependence and fear, holding humans back from their full potential. The story dives into hidden truths about human existence, the strange forces. As she told Alex more about this dark force, which fed on fear to control humanity, he found it hard to grasp the huge scale of what was happening. He began to understand that learning about this cosmic battle between light and darkness was essential, not just for him, but for the future of all people on Earth. So the fear that people feel nowadays is mostly something created by those in power. She mentioned that this has been going on for a long time, starting with religious leaders who scared people into following them by saying it would keep the gods happy. Now, people aren't as afraid of gods, but instead they fear man-made laws, which often go against nature. She thinks that's why he was taken, because those in control were about to face a big challenge, with battles happening in the sky and sea, and intense random storms popping up around the world. The elders believe humans can survive these challenges, but the problem is that most people don't even know this dark force exists. The elders want to help humans fight this force. He wondered why they didn't just let humans deal with it on their own, even if it meant they might destroy themselves. She just smiled at this, happy he asked, because it showed he was ready to learn the truth. She explained that the elders needed things from Earth too, so it was more like a trade. They help humans and in return get something they need. She then talked about co-evolution, which means that humans and the elders could grow and improve together. They hoped that one day, humans would become their allies once they overcame the dark force. He wasn't the only one chosen. Others had been picked too to help spread this knowledge. even if it might sound unbelievable to most people. While on the ship, he explored and noticed some interesting details. The walls had a soft, curved design, and the lighting was gentle, making it hard to tell the size of the space. The walls had a pattern that looked like honeycombs, and the light was a glowing blue-white that seemed to come from nowhere. He wore a special suit, just like this ones the aliens had on. It fit him perfectly, so much so that he barely noticed it. She explained that the suit provided him with nourishment by exchanging energy, so he didn't need to eat or use the bathroom while wearing it. She also shared how the ship was powered, using electromagnetic energy, a source that humans had known about since the early 20th century, but had been hidden by those in control. But the ship's design was another mystery. He asked about its shape, and she had a hard time explaining it since their cultures were so different. She started with something familiar, saying their first explorers had landed in northern Africa, where they helped the locals and lived so long that humans thought they were immortal. This wasn't even the strangest part. They had left behind a model of their ancient ships, right in the Egyptian desert, the pyramids, which had been claimed by pharaohs but never fully understood. He was amazed when he learned that he was actually traveling in a ship like those pyramids. She explained that the ship could even change its shape to gather energy more efficiently when it landed. He was excited to reach their home planet, Haven, and learn more. But she then revealed something even more surprising, another dimension that humans couldn't see because of genetic changes made by the dark force. This other dimension held all the secrets and could let them travel through time and break the limits of the physical world. New discoveries challenge everything he knows about being human, the hidden dimension. She used a simple example to explain it. Ever notice when you misplace your car keys only to have them reappear in the same spot later? She said that was slipping into another dimension, which was hard for him to grasp at first. She and her crew were actually time travelers from his future, working to mix their DNA with humans so they could adapt better to Earth. But this wasn't the biggest challenge. They were still trying to figure out how to breathe in Earth's oxygen-rich environment without problems. They were getting close to being able to live among humans without anyone noticing. While they kept working on this, they also continued their secret experiments to blend in with human society more and more. Without this adjustment, he would have been stuck alone in an empty void. Similarly, what we often think of as ghosts are really being stuck in temporary shifts between dimensions. They only become visible briefly, without a solid form. Once their frequency lines up with ours, we might be able to see all kinds of creatures living on our level. Xena explained this as they entered a room filled with alien technicians working on advanced technology. Later, he found out that this was just part of a test for a breeding program on a faraway planet called Haven. These tests were meant to make sure his body was strong enough to resist different diseases and that he wasn't carrying anything dangerous. After he passed the tests, he was introduced to a strange machine. This machine adjusted the headrest tightly around his head, and in front of him flashed a series of images. The purpose of these images was a mystery to him, and afterward, he couldn't remember if they were real or just in his mind. He also wasn't sure if they took a blood sample during the process, but he did recall his finger being placed in a small device as the images continued to flash. But this wasn't the most shocking part. What he learned next changed everything. Humans aren't the only intelligent beings on Earth. Long before humans even appeared, a group of aliens called the Greys had already settled here. Since the middle of the 20th century, the Greys had been working with certain human military groups on a secret plan to create a new human-like species. This plan mirrored what happened when Homo sapiens replaced the Neanderthals. In time, these new beings might spread across the planet, slowly pushing current humans toward extinction. The Greys, along with their human partners, were working to make this new species immune to a deadly virus. Once they were ready, they planned to release this virus all over the world. On Haven, early tests had already started to see how the virus might behave on Earth. After the testing was done, Alex was returned to the same machine that had put him in a blue-gray suit earlier. This time he came out wearing a golden suit made of the same smooth Teflon-like material. Unsure of what was coming next, he asked Xena and her crew for more information. Haven, he learned, was a planet similar to Earth, but much smaller. Its sun was slowly dying, which made living there hard. The gravity and air pressure were much lower than on Earth, which made human life difficult. Xena told him that her ancestors had moved to Haven after a disaster struck their home planet. With their sun dying, they were exploring other places to live in their solar system. Earth, with its stable environment and rich variety of life, was an attractive option. Her ancestors had managed to adapt to Earth's conditions, opening up the possibility for their people to one day share the planet with humans. He enters a new world that challenges all limits, a glimpse into a world without money. But this wasn't the end of the surprises. As they approached Haven, he noticed it was much smaller than a nearby planet, which looked dry and lifeless. Haven, on the other hand, had water and clouds. When they landed, Xena pointed out her hometown, Nipa, and explained that the planet was governed by a council of 9 members. These members were elected from 3 districts, and every 2 years they would bring in new people to ensure a balance between old ideas and fresh perspectives. Once on the ground, he was amazed by how organized the city was. It was vast but didn't have many tall buildings, except for a few towers. Most of the structures were either small, circular buildings or large pyramid-shaped ones. He stayed with Xena's family and got to experience how the city worked and how the planet's government kept everything running smoothly. In a world unlike any other, beings from another place lived alone on their entire planet. Xena's home was huge and round, with walls that either curved outward or had a design like a beehive. There were no visible doors or floors. He guessed it stood about 3 stories tall. He was so amazed by his surroundings that he didn't even notice how he got inside. Only once he was in a large room, decorated in white and gold, did he realize he had entered. Inside, Xena mentioned she was going to spend some time in deep thought. He tried to do the same but couldn't move his body, while Xena floated 6 inches above the floor without any trouble. The special forces of their planet, Haven, made sleep unnecessary for them. Knowing they didn't have much time, Xena offered to show him around the city, and he quickly agreed. She introduced him to her guardians, who she called her parents, even though they didn't look anything like her. One of them, Yars, offered to take him on a tour in a vehicle they called the Dendar Special. It was a small car-like transport that fit 4 people, though it was a tight fit. The vehicle worked using both mental power and magnetic forces, gliding over a wide street that seemed carefully crafted. As they drove, he couldn't decide what was more fascinating, the amazing city or the unique car. He learned that the Dandar wasn't really needed since most places in the city could be reached by clear, floating pods. However, the Dandar gave a more private experience. They drove through mostly residential areas, where he could see inside homes through large windows, as there were no shops or stores. But this wasn't the most surprising thing. He found out that this society didn't use money at all. Instead, people got what they needed based on their personal needs, which he thought was similar to communism. Everyone had a role in the community, working only during set hours. Many also volunteered for bigger projects like space exploration. People didn't seem to care about owning things, a strange idea for him, who was used to the material world back home. The city's buildings were wide but not very tall. Some of them were shaped like glass pyramids, which were believed to store all the knowledge of their society. Curious, he decided to explore one of these pyramids. Inside, he found a public library that held records of both Haven's and Earth's history. What he learned was shocking. Haven and Earth shared a history going back 12,000 years, when Haven started orbiting Earth. The records explained that the current moon we see on Earth today is relatively new. There was another, older moon, which might have been lost in a massive crash that changed Earth's surface and created stories of ancient floods. But this old moon wasn't just a moon, it was a planet of its own, home to intelligent beings similar to those on Earth. Even more startling was what he learned next. Haven and Earth were once part of the same system. They both came from a planet named Kyber, located somewhere between Mars and Venus. Kyber was a cold planet, mostly covered in ice, with life forms that could survive in extreme conditions, either through technology or by living in harmony with nature. What do you think happened to the inhabitants of Kyber? Comment below with your theories, like this video, and don't forget to subscribe for more intriguing space mysteries.